Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 800. I started off with knight f3. My opponent went d5. So this lets me play the Reti gambit. Let's see, d5. I guess the main move here is knight f6, which is just kind of a waiting move, letting white decide how to, or waiting for white to decide how to set up his pieces. But d5 is a very principled way to play against knight f3. And then I go with c4. The Reti gambit, and black goes with d4. You see, d4 is not the top choice here. Just defending with c6 or e6 is more popular, but I think d4 is one of the better moves here. It's certainly a very principled way to play. Black is just taking more space since white is giving it to him, and this game takes on the character, the position takes on the character of a Benoni defense with the colors reversed. So white is playing the Benoni defense against black's d5, d4 opening. So anyway, interesting way to play. Let's see, knight c6 is a normal move here, but he just secures a center pawn with c5. Go bishop g2. So we're getting into a section of the opening database here where it's not so many games have been played, but black, the chess engine likes black in these positions. And I think especially after I'd play d3 and I'd never follow up with e3. At some point I really should have played e3 here. It really starts to like black a lot. Black has more space, and there's a momentary development disadvantage. Like I've got, white has more development than black, but it'll take a while for that to be felt, and black has time to get his pieces out as well. And so now here's the point at which e3 is normally played in this line. I went with a3 here, and black normally responds with a5, but he went with bishop d6, and we're just out of the opening book at this point. But it's not bad for black. Black's play, the bishop d6 instead of the a5, is a fine move here. See, I continue developing with my pieces, knight bd2, black castles. And I go knight to g5 here. Maybe this is the last chance I have to get a decent position out of the opening, really. The chess engine is recommending moves like rook e1 and e3, and still likes black, but it gives more or less a position that's playable for white. And I think it's not as bad as the chess engine makes it out to be. But the way I played is probably incorrect, and we'll see why in just a bit. Let's see. I went knight g5. And he went knight g4, which is kind of weird. But the chess engine says just drop the bishop back to e7. Taking a look at this knight on g5, threatening to trade it off. So knight to e4, that was my plan anyway. I wanted to sink a knight on that square. Knight takes, and then f5. And if you look at this position, the knight has to come back to the d2 square where it's blocking in the bishop. I still need to play moves like e3 or rook e1 and e3 to open up the center. And yeah, it looks like black is just dominating this this position. So I think this really is quite good for black. And so my mistake must have been somewhat earlier. So I was thinking before knight g5 probably I should. That's kind of my last chance to get on this rook e1, e3 plan. And that's what I should really do. I should really try and open up a line in the center before I go off with various knight adventures. Anyway, I played knight g5. He went knight g4. Not the best response, but still keeping an edge for black. And I went knight e4. Yeah, I just wanted to put a knight on this square. And then once again, he should probably drop this bishop back. In fact, the chess engine still likes black after this sequence. Bishop e7, h3 kicking the knight. Knight just goes back. So that knight to g4 move was kind of pointless. And then after this exchange, my other knight hops into e4, and then he drops back to e7. So the chess engine wants to keep the bishop pair for black. Well, both sides have the bishop pair. But this move, f5, is still in reserve to chase my knight away, and black has more space and equal development. So yeah, it is still a good position for black. f5 makes things a little easier for me because I can trade off this knight and take his bishop. So I have the bishop pair to look forward to in the long run. Let's see, plays queen takes d6, and now I kick the knight back. And he should really just drop his knight back to f6, and the chess engine rates this position as about equal. So I've gotten back to equality thanks to his f5 move. But he plays a move which is much worse. He plays this knight e3 move. Although a move like this is always interesting in Blitz, because your opponent is under a lot of time pressure to find a refutation. But basically this isn't working, and white should go on to win the game from here. Let's see. So I take the knight. This is all correct. He takes, and my knight goes to f3, and then he pushes on with f4. So reasonable play from white so far. Let's see. I went to queen e1. I wanted to defend this pawn. I didn't want to take and open up the g file just yet. I wanted to allow him to take so I could take back with the queen. And that's all right too. It's this move I didn't respond to correctly. I saw this knight here. I noticed it could jump into b3, and that's kind of an annoying move, you know, keeping this pawn backwards, forcing me to move my rook, giving him the option of trading off this bishop and maybe jumping into that square. Anyway, it's an annoying piece to have there on b3, and so I played the move b4. Now there's another way to get rid of that knight, which is much simpler, which is just to trade it off, and that would have been okay. Let's see. There's a couple lines here. Let's see if he takes with the e-pawn. I guess I didn't like this because he's kind of clamping down on me, but well, this is okay after I take this pawn. What's this? This is even material, and I have the bishop pair, and I guess I will unravel with b4, and maybe prepared by rook b1, and find some role for this bishop. I need to push some pawns forward on the queen side and try and open up a line for the dark squared bishop, but chess engine says that's okay for me, and so I guess I'll find a way to get that bishop into play. Yeah, actually maybe the chess engine is not looking ahead far enough. That might still be an uncomfortable position to play. Let's see, and if he takes with the c-pawn, which is kind of tempting, keep more pawns over here on the king side, so he keeps this kind of attack going. Then I have bishop to d5 check, and it looks like this also is kind of interesting. My queen can come out over here, and then there's also ideas of the queen coming out on this side as well. So anyway, seem to be playable positions with an edge. Keep in mind I'm a piece up, so I guess even if this dark squared bishop doesn't get into play, let's take a look at this other line. Even if this dark squared bishop doesn't get into play, it is an extra piece. So anyway, those would have been that would have been a simpler way to play this. I played b4, and actually this is not a mistake. Well, it's a mistake because I overlooked the obvious knight c2. So it's a psychological mistake. But from the chess point of view, I'm still winning, and at this stage. And I just need to play the natural move, queen to c3, defend my rook, and now I've got two pieces for a rook. I've got basically, let's see, he's got a light squared bishop, so I have this knight and this bishop against this rook, and the things are going to open up. So I think this bishop is going to get into play, and if he ever takes here, the bishop can come out on this side. So anyway, this is still a winning position for white. But well, I played the move queen d1. I don't know why. Probably I was just unnerved by the by the sudden appearance of the knight on c2, which I wasn't expecting. And so queen d1, it makes my job a lot harder. Although, well, once again, the chess engine still gives the edge to white here, so probably I'm still doing okay. But it gives black the opportunity to cause a lot of trouble. It's e4 moves, nice and interesting move. And I didn't respond in the best way. And in fact, we reach a segment here of the game where every move pretty much is a mistake. That one's a mistake, that one's a mistake. Well, that take back was pretty forced. That was a mistake, that was a mistake, that was a mistake, that was a mistake. So we got about 6 mistakes in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, 6 mistakes in a row pretty much, except for the one take back that was pretty forced. So I don't think this is because we were playing especially badly. I think this is just it's a position that's gotten too complicated for people to handle in a blitz environment, because some of these mistakes were not so obvious. So anyway, but I just wanted to show the chess engine lines and how the best play goes. But I'm not really criticizing either player at this point of the game. I think the queen d1 move I will criticize, because I should have just relaxed and thought about it rather than reacting so suddenly. But I mean, because at this point of the game I still have time on the clock. But well, now we're getting to places where it's just really, really complicated and hard to figure out the right answer. So I went knight g5, which I thought was pretty interesting. Just trying to get this pawn back without suffering too much damage over here on the king side. So the line given by the chess engine here is first b takes c5, that's a nice intermediate move. And if the queen takes, then just taking on e4. Cancel that. Taking on e4, yeah, this way, because the knight's under threat. And seems like this is okay for white. So it actually gives best play for black as queen over to h6. Taking a look at the h-pawn. Bishop and queen are coordinating on the h-pawn. And then still d takes e4, and bishop takes, queen takes, so kind of inviting the queen into your camp. This is a tricky way to play, but there is this nice check here that white has, forcing the king over this way, and then finally grabbing the knight. And so the chess engine says that white is still winning here. This pawn can be taken off with check, or he can take with the pawn, but apparently with the knight here, I'm not getting mated, and there's not even a perpetual. I guess he can check, chase me to the corner, and then the next check I can block with the knight. Or if he takes with the pawn, and as long as my knight is here guarding that square, looks like I'm okay. Although certainly it seems like there's some danger here of a rook sacrifice on f3 and a mate. So definitely a difficult position to defend in any case. So that's why I'm saying there's probably no easy answers here. So I played knight g5, technically not the best, and he played e takes d3, also technically not the best. f3, just pushing on. And the funny thing is, I thought this knight here would help defend these squares, so I was thinking that this was not going to be possible. So like I would just take that. But then here's this really clever move the chess engine comes up with. Queen takes d3. And the main line it gives is just trading queens and getting this massive pair of passed pawns on the third rank here. This is just really dangerous. Let's see. Finally, rook takes knight, getting rid of that knight, which is about to escape. The c2 exit had been prepared by that pawn, and then d2. And black is winning here, I think, with those rolling past pawns. So the question is, why should I take the queen and give him those passed pawns? Why can't I play something like knight takes e4? That's probably what I would have played. That was my kind of idea. But here's the clever part. He takes the queen off, and now the knight escapes. And now I'll cancel that, and the knight goes to c2, defending this pawn and looking to escape, I guess, on this square. So now the material balance is, let's see, I have a rook and 3 pieces. He has 2 rooks and 2 pieces. Yeah, so black is up the exchange, and black has this passed pawn here, which is still a thorn in my side. So probably a winning position for black. So that would be f3 there. Instead, he took on d3, reasonable move. I took back, which is the one move in the sequence that wasn't a mistake, and a pretty obvious move. And then he went queen to e7, lining up his queen behind the pawn and threatening to push it forward with a fork. Apparently that starts to give the advantage. That gives the advantage back to white there. So I guess I should say at the beginning of the sequence, white had the edge because the sacrifice wasn't really working. And at the end of the sequence, white has the edge. But there were various places where black had a winning position as well. Let's see. So queen e7 making this threat. But if the queen had gone to g6, this position is apparently about even. Let's see. So queen e7, And the idea here is I could play bishop d5 check and queen to h5. And this is the kind of thing I might have noticed in a slower game. It's one of those moves that requires you to change gears, right? You're thinking about defending. How can I defend against these onrushing pawns and all these threats against my king? And you think about how can I round up this knight here? But you should always be on lookout for these offensive possibilities, right? So I played this knight g5 idea, mostly with the knight g5 move, with the idea of protecting these squares and preventing his pawns from advancing so quickly. But it's also looking forward. So I already have a forward piece. I can get another forward piece with that bishop move with tempo, and then I can bring the queen in, and I have a winning attack there. So anyway, that's how I should have played it. Instead, I went with knight e4. So that it just blocks the view of the queen and stops the immediate threat of pawn to e2. And then now he played bishop takes, which is an interesting tactic. Once again, I won't criticize this because because it looks good at first glance and sort of move you might play in Blitz. But the chess engine says it's time to just give up the knight, take with the queen, and then push on with e2 and take advantage of that passed pawn. And that's pretty good, so that he gives up the knight at a moment when my queen is really needed here for defense. If my rook comes over here to defend against this pawn, the f-pawn could come forward. And so black is winning once again. Let's see. So bishop takes h3. Well, I forget if black was winning in that line, if there was some crazy defense. But anyway, that certainly looks good. And then here, I just grabbed the knight. It's sort of like I have a choice between taking the knight or the bishop, because if I take the bishop, then let's see, he can push on with the f-pawn. And then after this trade, he can escape with the knight. But this turns out to be good for white. So he gets his piece back, but it's still a little bit out of play. Let's see, I have two pieces for the rook, and I have my king pretty safe now. This knight is in a good spot, and I've rounded up the dangerous pawns. So I took the wrong piece, in a way, when I took this knight. I was thinking, I needed to keep my pieces in place over here to defend against these pawns, but taking the other way would have been stronger. Okay, and so we're left in a position where I'm only slightly better. That line I was much better. This line is I'm slightly better. He takes, I take, he takes, and maybe the best way to round up the pawn is rook to f3. Get the pawn that way. Probably safer than what I played as well. Anyway, I took with the king. I guess I didn't like the trade here, but rook takes, queen takes. This is also fine. I mean, his pawns are separated, and I'm going to be able to round them up pretty easily here. With the king taking, then it gives him some moves here. He can chase my king around. Let's see, I dropped the king back to g2. He traded rooks and played rook to f8 and queen to e2. And he went queen to f4. So maybe the best way for him to bring the queen into the game is to bring it over to f7. The chess engine rates that as best, but it still likes white. So queen f4, let's see, I take on c5 finally. I finally get that pawn back. And then rook f5. And the rook f5 move apparently is a mistake. And chess engine wants to go queen f5. It's hard to give a direct line after rook f5 that refutes it, but in general the idea is that there's now open back rank, and so a whole bunch of tactical possibilities have opened up for white that were not there in the other lines. So this rook f5 move leads to trouble. Let's see, I start with a good move here, bishop d4. Let's see, he brings his queen over to h4. And I just snag this pawn. This is okay. And he plays his rook to h5. And I knew this was coming. I knew he was threatening to check me here or here. He's going to just line up on that open h file. And I was thinking I could walk my king away from it if I played queen g3. But that actually is a mistake. So the best move here is knight to g3. and this is a nice defense. It's guarding this square, so the queen can't check on h1 anymore, and it's hitting the rook. So the chess engine says h6 is the best move. After which, just grab that, and I'm a piece up, and my king. There's just the only thing I have to worry about is if there's a perpetual check. I'm a piece up and I have the same number of pawns, but it's basically winning as long as there's no perpetual check, and it turns out there isn't. I can walk my king away safely. But there are other tries here. So, for example, well, first of all, if the rook moves, then there's a mate on the back rank, so that's right out. So that's one of the problems with lifting the rook up, although it did give black some aggressive possibilities as well. So the last thing black might try would be the queen coming in and checking on h2, but it turns out the king can come to f3, and there's no further checks. The knight is guarding this square for the rook to check from, and it's guarding this square for the queen to check from, and there's still threats on the back rank here, so black needs to respond to that, and so he's actually in big trouble here. So anyway, those are the winning lines. Queen g3 actually should lose, and we'll get to the key moment next. So played queen h1 check, forced my king to f2, and now there's a winning tactic for black that he didn't play, but you should be able to spot this. This is a good tactics quiz for you. It's black's turn to move. Well, how does black win this game? Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. Pause the video if you want time to think about it. There are two possible rook checks, and he chose the wrong one. So the right one is here. And, well, the point is I can't block the check. I can't go down, so I have to go up. And wherever I go, actually, I only have one move there. That's right, in that direction. He follows up with the rook to h3, and skewering the queen and the king, and he's just got the material edge at this point, as well as the attack. Well, it'll be a queen against two pieces and even number of pawns, so it should be a pretty easy win for black. So I will criticize that move. Black was attacking, and when you've got two checks, you should really look and find the best one. Let's see. So on the other hand, maybe I should have noticed that before I played queen g3 too. That I probably should have seen that tactic coming. So I should have gone with this knight g3 defense. Anyway, he played rook to f5, checking from on top, and now my king can just walk away, and this is kind of the line I'd been seeing when I played the queen move, queen to g3, and this is okay for me. So let's see, he goes queen f1 check, king d2, and just walk away from the checks, and he kind of runs out of runs out of things to do. And notice also there's this mate threat hanging over black's head. That was the other attractive point of that queen g3 move, is that it introduces these counter threats. So he plays g6. So I go queen b8 check. He blocks with the rook, and now I should play something like queen takes b7 and just continue that way. I played a move that doesn't work. I played knight f6 check, and so here's your second chance. Your second tactical quiz for this video. What's the best move for black? You're in check, so there's not too many. See if you can find the best one. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away now. The only move that black has that doesn't lose immediately, actually, is queen takes f6, and that wins because his queen is hanging, but my queen is hanging too. And if I take the rook, he takes back with the queen. So I can't do that. I have to take the queen. Well, let's see. I could retreat my queen, but is there anywhere I could go? Yeah, I mean, if I just retreat my queen, it's going to be bishop versus rook, so it'll be up the exchange. And if I take the queen, he takes the queen, and he's also up the exchange. And this endgame is probably pretty easy for black to win. I do have this passed pawn, but it's kind of far back, and the rook is better at doing things like keeping the king at bay, and so he'll probably be able to push these pawns forward quicker than I can get mine through the center here. So anyway, that would have been an unfortunate turnaround. Let's see. Instead of knight f6, I was going to say I should have played something like this: queen b7, and it's threatening a mate. He's got to respond to that. The chess engine gives this line: queen f4 check. King goes to safety over here at c2. Rook f7 blocking, and queen c8 check. I'm just kind of working my way in, and this still is a winning attack for. This is still a winning attack for white. Anyway, knight f6. So the only other legal moves here are all king moves, and they all lead to mate. So in the game, he went king f7, and we got to see this nice mate with queen c7 check. The king went to e6, and the mate with the queen and the knight and the bishop blocking the escape squares. So a very aesthetic mate. Let's see. He could have gone the other way. Where's the other mate? Oh, so yeah, if the king goes to the corner, then queen takes rook as mate. So that was here and here. Those are his other choices. So if the king goes to g7, then actually the immediate knight g4 check, which is probably what I would have played, is not so convincing. Although the chess engine says there's still a mate in 18 there. The fastest mate though. For white, and the best defense for black goes like this. It's queen c7 check, rook f7 blocking, knight to g4 check now, and driving the king back. King goes to g8, and knight's covering the escape squares, and then knight to h6 check, king f8, queen here is mate. So anyway, there's a forced mate with any of those king moves, although I like the move he chose because it did lead to this very pretty mate. And that's how the game ended. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you again soon.